This is absolute nonsense. I mean, Barry's talking about langoustine and getting them across the border. Well, I can tell you that my constituents, do not have enough money in their pocket to be buying langoustine or being in complete... No, you've had your say, Barry. My turn. This is an absolute betrayal of Brexit. It'll come to no surprise to anyone watching this programme that I was an avid Brexiteer. But Keir Starmer is taking us on a slow march back into Europe. He is absolutely betraying the will of the British people. Keir Starmer has called this a win-win deal. It's a lose-lose deal. He sold out the British workers with his Indian trade deal. He sold out the farmers with his US trade deal. And now he has completely sold out the British fishing industry. It is finished with this deal, let alone the fact that we will become closer aligned once again to the European Court of Justice, which we absolutely do not want. We have the best courts and the laws in the land, in this country. We do not want to be aligned closer to them again.
Well, look, all trade deals are a balance. You have to give stuff, they have to give stuff, and it's a matter of what you want. If you remember back to the Brexit debate, Michelle, those people who are arguing for Brexit have in effect got what they said at the time, because you'll remember one of their arguments was, look, we actually have the same regulations about our food standards and sanitary and phytosanitary controls as the EU at the moment. So there's no way, the Brexiteers used to say, that they will impose border controls on the stuff that we want to export to Europe. Well, unfortunately, they did. But now what we've managed to negotiate is saying to them, look, we have the same regulations, why don't we drop the border controls? And the EU's agreed to that, and that's going to be worth millions to our exporters, because one of the things that the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee did after Brexit was to actually bring in all the exporters who were saying, we're having terrible time because our langoustine are being blocked at the border. They then go off before we can get them into French restaurants. Our trade is being blocked and the food is going off. Now, all of that won't happen now. That is a great plus.
Oh, Barry Gardiner, yes, that's fine. We can get rid of some of these checks as you're suggesting, but people at home will be shouting out, but hold on a second, because the flip side of that was that essentially now we have to bow down to their rules, their regulations, and we don't essentially have a veto on what those are.
But we don't, because we haven't joined the customs union. So at any stage, let's say the...
Why don't they align with our rules? Why did we have to match theirs?
Well, they have. Our rules are actually the same. That's the point. So we are aligned, and we're simply saying because we're aligned, we don't need to do this. But in the future, at any stage, if the EU were to suddenly lower their requirements on food regulations, we could say, no, sorry, we're actually going to now come out of this because you've changed the rules of the game.
He's done a total sellout on our fisheries. A large part of Brexit was taking back control of our fantastic coastal waters. From January next year, under the deal that we did, we were going to get back control of every single sprat and mackerel in UK waters. He's put that off for at least 12 years, allowed Macron, which is what he wanted, allowed the French and many others to plunder UK waters again.
But Barry, those bottom trawlers are still allowed into our waters. Those big
are at the moment.
Yeah, and that's going to carry on. That's not going to change. That's part of the deal. And so we're still going to be, subject to that type of intense disruption to our waters.
No, you misunderstand what I'm saying, because, in fact, the MPA, the marine protected areas that we're introducing, will actually preclude from some of the most important areas of our inshore waters anybody from going in there. What we want to do, of course, is to build that inshore fleet. And there's another thing that we need to do, and I actually think the French haven't cottoned on to this, and that is that the phase 2 of the round of marine protected areas is about to be announced. Sorry, phase 3 of the marine protected areas is about to be announced by the Coastal Authority. And when that is done, they will be eliminating certain areas from all bottom trawling. in those marine protected areas. So I think the French may have thought that they were getting more than they actually are. And also, our fishermen need to build up those inshore fleets so that we can take advantage of the quota that we will be getting.
It is.
Things you
I
can
agree.
do.
And you haven't protected our waters from it. You said this is going to happen, but it's not happened. We're going into this deal.
That's what the MPAs are about. That's what the
we're going into this deal without that being in place. It doesn't matter how you try and soften it or dress it up. This is the end of the British fishing industry.
It really isn't. I'm sorry.
I've got to tell you, a lot of fishermen or fisher person, I don't know what it's supposed to call them these days, but fishermen, a lot of them disagree with you. I mean, I've been watching coverage on this channel and in other places as well. So many people involved with the fishing industry have got in touch. They're absolutely devastated. They're angry. They're devastated. They feel that no regard has been paid to their industry whatsoever, that there was sold out at the first referendum.
It really isn't. I'm sorry.
I've got to tell you, a lot of fishermen or fisher person, I don't know what it's supposed to call them these days, but fishermen, a lot of them disagree with you. I mean, I've been watching coverage on this channel and in other places as well. So many people involved with the fishing industry have got in touch. They're absolutely devastated. They're angry. They're devastated. They feel that no regard has been paid to their industry whatsoever, that there was sold out at the first referendum. Not a jot has been cared about them on this one. They simply cannot understand why they are held in such low regard. That is their feeling.
Let's look at what they comprise in terms of UK industry. It's less than 0.5% of our industry, whereas if you take, for example, the rest of our food supply into Europe, and we're not just talking about langoustines, in fairness, we're talking about sausages, we're talking about pies, we're talking about all sorts of food products. It's actually our biggest manufacturing industry in this country is food. It's food production. And therefore, to be able to get that into Europe now, without all those border checks, without all that additional cost that all those producers were paying, is hugely more valuable to our economy. And as I say, look, there is in
so
any
do you
trade,
accept then
the
that you've
best
put
trade
fishermen at the
deals,
lowest end, you've put them right down the pecking order then?
They represent, no, not at all, because I think actually what we've done is enabling our fishing fleet, our inshore fleet, to expand in the time that they have to be able to take advantage of the quota that we will then have. Well, it won't be quota, it'll all be ours in that.
Barry, it doesn't matter how you dress it up. The fishing industry, the British fishermen, the French fishermen, this has been one of the most emotive issues for decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet again, France has managed to get their fishermen to stand up for their fishermen and get this deal through.
And we've been able to stand up for our food production industry.
Once again, the UK government has not stood up for its fishermen. And as I started with this conversation, Keir Starmer has sold out our fishing industry. Look, I just don't understand what part of this deal is good for us. Our defence industry is leading in the world in terms of its technology and its ability to create weapons at the end of the day. Why are we having to pay millions, if not billions, to have access to bid for contracts? We're not talking about being, having any favourable treatment. We're just talking about having access to bid for contracts, for arms contracts. Now, the fact is, we are leading the way. So surely people should be paying us to be bidding for our contracts. Why are we giving in? This is no deal. This is another example of trying to fool the UK public. The UK public are not stupid. They know that we have some of the best arms productions in the world. Why are we paying to even have the opportunity to win these deals?
Barry?
No, I think it's about co-production and what we do. And if you look at some of the best weaponry that we have been part of creating, is when we are corresponding with other countries and manufacturing together. And we will put part of the components in there. They will put part of the components in there, and then we sell it and we get a proportionate share of it. So it's our contribution to what we will be producing together.
Which, Barry, will have to pay millions to even get the opportunity to contribute. So that is no deal.
Well, I'm sorry, if it means, as Chopper actually said on the programme, that this is worth potentially £9 billion to our defence industries, then it's certainly one that the defence industries themselves, you said, well, look what the fishermen are saying. Let's look at what the defence industries are saying. They're saying we've been crying out for this. We were excluded. We're now back in the frame. We're going to be able to produce. We're going to be able to actually get the financial
It's not
benefit.
the defence industries that will have to be paying the millions, if not billions, to even get the opportunity to go down this road. It'll be, yet again, the British taxpayer sold out by the Labour government.
They are the ones who will get the jobs in those defence industries.
So we still don't really know.
Again, this is another example of Keir Starmer taking us right back into Europe. The borders are going to open under this youth mobility scheme, which is 18 to 30-year-olds. Well, I don't know. I would never call a 30-year-old a youth, but they are adults. The fact is we are opening the doors potentially to 80 million people. 80 million people would be eligible under this scheme. You might laugh, Barry, it's a fact. 80 million people will be eligible under this scheme to come into this country, to use our health service, to use our doctors, our dentists.
That's completely wrong.
To claim benefits.
It's totally wrong.
Bring their families. We cannot sustain this. You are opening the doors to Europe again.
Sorry, this is scaremongering, and let me explain why. Because actually the youth mobility scheme, we've got precedents, right? We've got dozens of these schemes already in operation, over 12 schemes already in operation. They are capped in numbers. So the idea that 80 million...
This one's not capped in numbers.
This one doesn't exist yet.
But there's no guarantee that there's going to be a cap in numbers.
We know... Well, all you can do is you can say, this is how these schemes operate. You're pretending that these schemes operate in a different way. So let me explain. There will be, at the current rate of all the schemes that there are caps in numbers. They cannot avail themselves of our health service. They have to pay a health surcharge. They cannot avail themselves...
They don't, Barry.
Sorry.
They don't. They're not turned away by the National Health Service.
I'm sorry.
Anyone that goes and turns up...
They pay a health surcharge in order to get the visa, right? It is a visa system. It is a capped visa system. And, well, again, another soundbite, but no facts.
Because you're right in some of the stuff that you say about, it's capped and there's a surcharge and all the rest of it. You're factually accurate in that. So if we are to assume that an EU scheme would emulate that, so it would be capped and all the rest of it, why aren't the government then clearly communicating, look, whilst we're fleshing out the detail, worry not, ladies and gents, because it definitely will be capped. It definitely will have restrictions. Why isn't that the mood music coming out of the government then?
Because when you're in the midst of a negotiation, and they're saying that this will not probably happen at least until next year with a new round of negotiations. But when you're in the midst of negotiation, you don't in public set your negotiation strategy. So, but what we do know, and indeed Johnny Reynolds was on the radio this morning setting out the way in which the other schemes operated, saying this is how they're proposing to do it. We have to say, if it goes in the same way as all the others, it will be a benefit to our young people. It'll enable them to go and get experience, get language skills, get experience in other countries around Europe. And actually, it would be beneficial to net migration.
I think you're utterly trying to fool the British public once again. We know that Keir Starmer, wants to open the doors into Europe.
Tell me about
We cannot sustain any more mass migration into this country.
Of course, we're not talking about that. What I'm asking you to do is to analyse all the schemes that exist and to show me one aspect of them which it would, if it were continued into the new youth mobility scheme, if there were such a thing.
And why do we need another one? If we've got 12 schemes already, why do we need another one?
Because our young people want to be able to go and spend time working in Europe.
You've just said we've got 12 schemes already.
Yes, with other countries.
This is another example.
The United States,
This is
Japan.
another example of where we are giving everything away to Europe, and Europe are laughing all the way back to their countries.
Well, again, another soundbite, but no facts.
Because you're right in some of the stuff that you say about, it's capped and there's a surcharge and all the rest of it. You're factually accurate in that. So if we are to assume that an EU scheme would emulate that, so it would be capped and all the rest of it, why aren't the government then clearly communicating, look, whilst we're fleshing out the detail, worry not, ladies and gents, because it definitely will be capped. It definitely will have restrictions. Why isn't that the mood music coming out of the government then?
Because when you're in the midst of a negotiation, and they're saying that this will not probably happen at least until next year with a new round of negotiations. But when you're in the midst of negotiation, you don't in public set your negotiation strategy. So, but what we do know, and indeed Johnny Reynolds was on the radio this morning setting out the way in which the other schemes operated, saying this is how they're proposing to do it. We have to say, if it goes in the same way as all the others, it will be a benefit to our young people. It'll enable them to go and get experience, get language skills, get experience in other countries around Europe. And actually, it would be beneficial to net migration.
Fishermen or fisher person, I don't know what it's supposed to call them these days, but fishermen, a lot of them disagree with you. I mean, I've been watching coverage on this channel and in other places as well. So many people involved with the fishing industry have got in touch. They're absolutely devastated. They're angry. They're devastated. Youth mobility, that was another thing that was discussed at length.